When I was a girl, I remember hearing my father tell a short parable when he preached one time, or more than one time, about a man who was out exploring, and this man came across a cave. And in this cave, he discovered a stash of hidden treasure. Maybe it was pirate treasure. The light in the cave was kind of dim, especially when he went farther in, but everywhere he looked, he could see glints and glimmers from gold coins and statuettes and goblets and just every sort of treasure you could think of. Well, this man could not believe his good fortune, so he began to stuff his pockets full with riches until they were bursting at the seams, and then he gathered as much as he could carry in his arms, and when he couldn't hold one more thing, he set off back toward home. But as he reached the mouth of the cave, he heard a soft voice call out from somewhere back in its recesses. Take whatever you like, but don't forget the best. Don't forget the best, the man thought. What could I have missed? And he immediately turned back around and went in again, exchanging some of the things he had initially picked up for other things that now seemed perhaps a bit bigger and brighter. And after he was satisfied that he had examined everything, he turned to leave again, laden down with his burden of treasure. But again came the voice, take whatever you like, don't forget the best. The man was quite sure he had gone over everything, but the idea that he was leaving something of even greater value behind was just too much to bear, and he turned again and once more went through all the treasures in the cave. If it was possible, his pockets were even more stuffed, and his arms were even more full. The third time he went to leave, but again, as he reached the entrance to the cave, he heard that voice, take whatever you like, don't forget the best. Well, by this time, the man was sure that he had the best. And he didn't know who the voice belonged to or what it was talking about. But he shook it off, and he started back across the fields toward home. And as he walked, one by one, everything he'd picked up crumbled into a pile of dust and leaves, and his treasure vanished. And the point of that parable was that the man had snatched up as many of those gifts as he could, but he had left the giver in the cave. The giver was the true treasure. And isn't that exactly what Jesus was saying in our gospel reading this morning? Store your treasures in heaven, where moths and rust cannot destroy. Keep your treasures where they can't crumble into a pile of dust and leaves. Enjoy the gifts, yes, but realize that they can never outlast the giver. He is the only permanent blessing. He is the only true treasure. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also, Jesus goes on to say. You know, why is it that we spend so much time trying to understand some of the most obscure passages in the Bible, trying to work out those deep mysteries of God, but we take some of the plainest statements that are by no means obscure, and we either ignore them or we try to say they must have some meaning that we don't understand. There really isn't anything mysterious about what Jesus was saying here. Please don't be obsessed with the things that aren't going to last. Invest yourself in eternity. That's the wise thing to do. And we read those words, and we may even say that we believe them, but do our actions show that we believe them? What do we seek after? be obsessed with? Jesus goes on. Your eye is like a lamp that provides light for your body. When your eye is healthy, your whole body is filled with light. But when your eye is unhealthy, your whole body is filled with darkness. And if the light you think you have is actually darkness, how deep that darkness is. What do your eyes have to do with any of this? Well, your eyes are how you look for things. You use them to search and seek after whatever it is you are trying to attain. And whatever you're looking for, Jesus says, will eventually fill up your body, your entire being. If your eye is healthy, your body is light. And if your eye is unhealthy, your body is dark. But be careful, Jesus warns. You can think that what you have is light when in reality it's really darkness. And then how do you ever expect to get away from it? What are you looking for? What are you seeking? What are your goals, your passions, your dreams? Because Jesus goes on to say, those things, whatever you're looking for, those things are going to master you. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. And ultimately, you can have only one master. No one can serve two masters, for you will eventually hate one and love the other. You'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. In our first reading today from 1 Chronicles, the author reminded us that there were Levites in Israel, priests, who were specifically assigned to be in charge of the treasury of the Lord. Other Levites, led by Ahijah, were in charge of the treasuries of the house of God and the treasuries of the gifts dedicated to the Lord. And it had never struck me before, but when I read that again recently, I realized that the temple was not only the place of worship for Israel, it was also the treasure house. When the nation collected valuable items through diplomacy or battle, they were taken to the temple and dedicated to the Lord. Do you think that's any coincidence? That the place where God dwelt with the Israelites was also where their national treasure was? And where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I think God wanted the place of His presence to be synonymous with the place where the Israelites stored their treasure. In so doing, I think He wanted them to come to the realization that wherever He is the place where our true treasure is, because He is the treasure. Of course, by the time Jesus came, it was quite clear that most of the Israelite leadership had totally missed the point. There were still a lot of riches associated with the temple and its services. But the Pharisees and religious leaders had set things up at the temple to benefit themselves in a monetary way, and very little of their conduct had anything to do with God or His presence. They were like the man who had stuffed his pockets and arms full of gold and totally missed out on the real treasure. The Pharisees thought they were rich, but they were very poor. The light they thought they had was actually darkness, and as Jesus warned, how deep then was that darkness? Many of them missed out on the true treasure, but I hope we're not missing out on it now. I hope we are not obsessed with the things that will eventually crumble away into dust and leaves. If we don't realize that God is the only true treasure we'll ever know, then nothing we do have will ever be enough. We'll always be obsessed with getting more and more and more. But when we embrace God as our treasure, we can say, along with the Apostle Paul, that we have learned to be content in any circumstance, no matter where we find ourselves, whether we're rich or poor, slave or free, whether we have everything or nothing. Every treasure we will ever need, and every treasure our hearts will ever want, can only be found in God. In His character, we behold enough gems to fill up an eternity of discovery. And all of these, and so much more, He is willing to share with us. He is sitting at the back of the cave today, saying, take whatever you like. But please, don't forget the best. He is the best. And He is anxious for us to find the treasure of our hearts in Him. Today, you're standing in the cave, wondering what to take. What will it be? Today, you are one of the gatekeepers in charge of the treasury in your very own temple. What sort of treasure are you storing up in there?